I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing out the nightmare that unfolded over the past few months. My name's Dan, and I've been with my wife, Emily, for over 10 years. We got married young, had what I thought was a happy, stable life. She was the kind of girl who seemed perfect, funny, smart, confident, the kind of woman everyone admired. We had a good routine, a nice house, and 2 kids I loved more than anything. Or so I thought. Things started to change around last year. Emily became more distant, more irritable. Small things, she'd snap at me for little stuff, get defensive over nothing. I'd ask her what was wrong and she'd brush it off, saying she was just busy with work or tired. But I could tell she was hiding something. She was more secretive about her phone, always locking it, deleting messages, staying late at the office more often. At first, I shrugged it off. Maybe she was stressed, maybe she was just working harder to give our family a good life. But then I started noticing other things. She'd come home smelling of perfume I didn't recognize, or she'd be unusually flustered. When I caught her in a lie about her whereabouts. Once, I found a lipstick stain on her collar, stuff I knew she wouldn't wear, and her quick cover-up only made me more suspicious. I tried talking to her about it, but she'd just roll her eyes and tell me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. That's Emily. She always had a way of making me feel crazy, like I was blowing things out of proportion. A few weeks ago, I found her phone with a suspicious message from someone named Chris, something about seeing her at the cabin this weekend and how much he missed her. I didn't think much of it at the time, maybe a work friend, maybe just a friend. But then I saw the way she reacted when I mentioned the message. Her face froze, her eyes darted away, and she snapped back with some bullshit about how it was nothing, just a coworker she had a few drinks with after work. That's when I started to put the pieces together. It didn't add up. Then last Sunday I decided to follow her. I was feeling anxious, paranoid even, but something told me. I had to know for sure. I waited until she left for her supposed book club and I followed her to the cabin. The drive was long, maybe an hour, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I might find. When I got there, I saw her car parked outside, dark, quiet. I crept closer and peeked through the window. That's when I saw her, Emily, sitting on the porch talking with a man I didn't recognize at first. But then I saw his face. It was Chris, her boss. My stomach dropped. I saw the way they looked at each other, intimate, close. They were clearly more than just colleagues. They were holding hands, leaning into each other, whispering. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the way she looked at him, the way he looked back at her, I knew this wasn't just innocent. It was an affair. I was frozen there, watching them, feeling like my heart was breaking. All those years I trusted her, believed in us. And now I knew she'd been lying the whole time. She'd been sneaking around at our cabin, probably doing who knows what with her boss. I felt a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief all swirling inside me. I wanted to run, to scream, to do something, anything to make this stop. But I stayed there watching her with him, knowing my life had just been shattered in that moment. I must have stood there for what felt like an eternity just watching them. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was seeing. Emily, my wife of 10 years, the woman I trusted with everything, was sitting there with her boss, Chris, doing God knows what. It was like a punch to the gut, so sudden, so raw. I felt my fists clench, my jaw tighten, and a cold rage started to simmer underneath the shock. I didn't want to believe it at first. Maybe I was imagining things, maybe this was just some friendly conversation. But then I saw her lean in close, whispering into his ear, her hand resting on his knee. They weren't just talking, they were flirting. The way she looked at him, the way she giggled at his stupid jokes, the way her body language told me she was more than just a coworker. My stomach twisted with anger. How could she do this? After everything we had built, after a decade of trust, she was throwing it all away with some guy who probably only cared about her body and her secrets. I wanted to storm in there, to confront her right then and there. But part of me knew I had to stay calm. I had to see the full picture before I made any moves. So I stayed hidden, watching her touch his arm, leaning closer than she ever would with me. I saw her lean in for what looked like a kiss, brief but enough. Enough to tell me everything I needed to know. When Emily finally got into her car and pulled away, I didn't follow her. I just stood there, trembling, trying to breathe through the chaos inside me. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. How could she lie to me all this time? How could she pretend everything was fine when she was out there, sneaking around at our cabin with her boss? It was like my whole world had flipped upside down in a matter of hours. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying what I saw, the way she looked at him, the intimacy of their meeting. I kept asking myself if I mattered anymore, if I was just some placeholder in her life. The woman I loved, the woman I thought loved me, was out there betraying everything we'd built, and I was left sitting in the dark, feeling more alone than I ever had before. I knew I had to confront her. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The next morning, I woke up feeling like my head was stuffed with cotton. The image of her with Chris kept replaying in my mind over and over. I couldn't get past it. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew this wasn't going to be easy. Emily was the kind of woman who could spin lies and manipulate her way out of anything. She was good at pretending everything was fine, even when she was doing something terrible behind my back. I decided I couldn't just blurt out everything right away. I had to be strategic. I waited until she was home, acting normal, acting like nothing had changed. She was in the kitchen, making coffee, humming some tune I didn't recognize. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, and finally asked her what she'd been doing last weekend. She looked at me with those icy blue eyes, the kind that used to make me melt, now just cold and calculating. "Nothing special," she said, scoffing like I was the one overreacting. "Just work stuff, you know how it is." I pressed her a little, asking if she'd spent time at the cabin. She hesitated for a split second, then rolled her eyes. "I was with my friends. Why are you bringing this up now? You've been so paranoid lately, it's exhausting." That's when I decided to push harder. "Who were you with at the cabin? Spit it out, Emily. I saw you with Chris. Don't lie to me now." Her face changed. For a second she looked genuinely surprised, then her expression hardened. She scoffed again, crossing her arms. "You're nuts. I don't know what you saw, but you're imagining things. Maybe I met a guy, maybe I didn't. Who cares? It's not like I'm cheating on you." I felt my blood boil. How could she lie so easily? How could she turn everything around like that? I wanted to scream, but I held back. Instead, I just looked at her and said, "I saw you, Emily. I saw the way you looked at him, the way you touched him. Don't lie to me anymore. I deserve the truth." She rolled her eyes again, clearly annoyed. "You're overreacting. I don't owe you any explanations. Maybe I'm tired of your accusations and your paranoia. Maybe I'm done with this bullshit." That was the moment I realized I was dealing with someone who wasn't just cheating. She was willing to lie, manipulate, and gaslight her way out of it. I felt a deep ache in my chest, like I'd been punched. After all these years, she was capable of spinning lies so easily, just to keep her secret safe. I knew then that confronting her wouldn't fix anything. Not yet. I had to come up with a plan, a way to get real proof, to make her see that I wasn't just some fool she could lie to anymore. Over the next few days, I threw myself into trying to gather more evidence. I couldn't just take her word for it anymore, especially after how she'd lied so convincingly. I started checking her phone when she wasn't looking, going through her messages, her emails, anything that could give me a clue. It was rough, feeling like a damn detective in my own marriage, but I needed to know the truth. What I found was worse than I thought. She had been texting Chris constantly, morning, noon, night. They exchanged flirtatious messages, pictures, plans for her to meet him at the cabin again. I saw messages where she called him the only one who really understands her, and her escape from this messed up life. My stomach turned over. She told me she was exhausted, stressed out, and that I was just paranoid. But the truth was right there on her phone. One night, I decided to set a trap. I told her I was going to bed early, but I stayed up, pretending to be asleep. I watched her sneak her phone out from under her pillow, typing a message to Chris, telling him how excited she was to see him again at the cabin. Then she slipped out of bed and tiptoed out of the house. I didn't follow her that night. I was too furious, so I just stayed. In my room, my mind racing. The next morning she acted normal, too normal, like nothing had happened. I knew she'd been lying about everything. I felt a mix of rage and helplessness. How had I missed all of this? How could someone I trusted for so long betray me so completely? Then she did something that pushed me over the edge. She sat me down at the breakfast table, fake smile on her face, and started spinning her little lies about needing some time to herself, saying she was just stressed, that I was reading too much into things. She called me paranoid again, like I was the problem, not her. That was when I finally snapped. I looked her in the eyes and said, "You think I'm stupid, huh? I know you've been cheating. I saw the messages, the meetings at the cabin, the way you look at him. You've been planning to leave me for Chris, haven't you?" She blinked, caught off guard for a second. Then she sneered, "You're out of your mind. You don't know what you're talking about. I love you, Dan, but I'm done pretending I'm happy. Maybe you should look in the mirror instead of accusing me of stuff I haven't done." That's when I realized her lies knew no bounds. She was good at it, too good. I felt like I was losing my mind, but I also knew I had to get her to admit the truth. I couldn't keep questioning myself. I was done being the fool. Whatever came next, I couldn't stay in this mess anymore. I had to decide whether I was going to fight for my marriage or walk away from the woman I'd trusted for years. The days that followed were a blur of anger, sadness, and cold calculation. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate. Every time I looked at her, I saw a stranger, someone I no longer recognized. Her lies had become so thick, so woven into her words, that I started questioning everything. But deep down, I knew the truth. She was cheating, planning to leave me for Chris, and I was just a fool for thinking otherwise. I didn't want to just confront her again and get more lies. I needed to make her see that I wasn't just some naive husband anymore. She was messing with the wrong guy, so I started crafting a plan. I needed proof, solid enough to blow her whole world apart. I also wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to be played anymore. One night I set a trap. I installed a cheap recording app on her phone just to catch her in the act if she slipped up. I knew it was a risky move, but I needed to hear her own words. That night she went out again, this time claiming she was meeting some friends for drinks. I stayed in pretending to sleep, but I kept my phone close. Sure enough, later that evening I heard her on the recording whispering to Chris about their plans. She was telling him about how she was going to fake a business trip and leave everything behind with him at the cabin. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. She wasn't just sneaking around. She was actively planning an exit, leaving me and the kids behind. I felt waves of nausea and rage. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face for so long, pretend she loved me, and then secretly plan to run away with some guy from work? The next morning I confronted her again. I played the recording, watching her face turn pale. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she had no words. Then she started crying, fake tears, I could tell. She kept saying she was sorry, that she didn't mean for it to get this far, that she was just stressed and needed a change. I listened to her, feeling numb. It was all so calculated. Her tears, her words, they were just her trying to save her ass. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I looked at her and said, "You're done. I've had enough of your lies. If you think you're leaving me for Chris, then you better do it now, because I'm not putting up with this anymore. You want to run off and have your affair, fine, but I want a divorce, and I want it now." Her face twisted into a sneer. "You're overreacting, Dan. This isn't how it looks. You're just jealous. I still love you. I'm sorry you feel this way, but I'm not going anywhere without my plans. You can't control me." That was the moment I realized. She was truly gone. She had no intention of stopping, no remorse. She was so wrapped up in her lies that she thought she could manipulate her way out of everything. I knew then that I had to let her go. No matter how much it hurt, I couldn't keep doing this, living with her deception, watching her betray everything we built. I decided I'd fight for the kids, for my dignity, and to start over without her. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew I had to be done with her lies. In the days that followed, I packed her things while she sat across from me, face blank, no apology, no regret. Just that same smug look she always had when she thought she was one step ahead. I told her she could leave, take her secrets and her lies, and never come back. She tried to argue, to manipulate, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I had seen her true face, and I was done being her fool. The kids didn't fully understand what was happening, but I made sure they felt loved and safe. I didn't want them to see their mother as some villain, just someone who made a terrible mistake. Me. I felt broken inside, like a part of me had been ripped out, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I finally saw clearly what she was, someone who lied, cheated, and used me. And I realized I deserved better. I moved out of the house a week later. I got a small apartment close by, enough to start over without losing sight of my children. I knew I'd have to rebuild my life from this mess, but I was determined. I took the time to heal, to process everything I'd been through, and to remind myself of what I truly deserved: honesty, respect, and someone who genuinely loved me, not someone who lied and manipulated. Looking back, I see how blind I was for so long. I see her lies, her schemes, how she tried to hide her affair until she thought she could get away with it. It hurt like hell, but it also opened my eyes. I learned that sometimes love isn't enough. Trust has to be earned, and betrayal cuts deeper than words can say. To anyone out there going through something similar, my biggest advice is this: don't ignore the signs. Don't let anyone convince you that their lies are justified or that you're overreacting. Trust your gut, because in the end, the truth will always come out. And when it does, you have to be brave enough to face it, no matter how painful. I'll never forget what happened, but I also know I'll be stronger for it. I'm still healing, still rebuilding, but I'm finally free from her web of lies. And that, more than anything, is what gives me hope for the future.